Was there anything that you imagined that real estate would be like that isn't like that? Or has there been any challenges in your career that you kind of had to work through to get to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. I thought that business was just going to come. I didn't know I was going to have to, I knew that I was going to have to hustle, but I thought, because you're in Santa Barbara and you're blonde and like business is going to come to you. Like it's going to be easy. Like the restaurant, they're going to line up outside and everything's going to be great.
Like that's ever going to happen.
Hi, everybody. Jose Luis Morales here. Welcome back to another episode of the Residual Real Estate Agent Show. Today we have Heather here with us. She's our newest eXp partner. And then we have the man, the myth, the legend, Aaron Novello, visiting us from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Today we want to get to know a little bit about Heather, her personal life, her business, and what made her do the transition to eXp as well, too. So welcome to the show, Heather. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing great.
Good.
Yeah, we're excited to be with you.
Thank you. Me too.
So for our viewers that don't know who you are, who is Heather? How do you pronounce your last name as well, too?
Martineau. Heather Martineau.
Martineau, yeah. And then how did you get involved in this wonderful world of real estate?
Yeah, so good question. I actually met somebody at a restaurant who was in real estate, but I had no idea what he was doing. And he came downstairs and I asked him, hey, what do you do? And he said, hey, I do real estate. And so I actually went up to his office after my shift and got the books. And it was probably within a year I had my license and I was off selling real estate.
And I guess I'm curious because I don't know how many people just say like, okay, real estate's my thing.
Yeah.
So like, how did you make the decision to say, you know what? Yeah, like this is my vehicle. This is my opportunity.
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to make more money.
Money.
And I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to do that. Mm-hmm. I think I was already about in my late 20s. And I was like, okay, I didn't do a bunch of college. I did some, but never really knew exactly which direction I was headed. Mm-hmm. So when I decided that I could do real estate and make as much money as I wanted, I had the motivation, I had the drive. So I just decided, I always liked looking at houses when I was a young girl with my mom. I just never put two and two together. So when he said, you know what, you just have to take 3 courses and go take your state exam. And I was like, I was all over it. As soon as I figured out exactly what I wanted to do, I was off and running.
Now, like, were you like an immediate success? Like, meaning like you come in here, you start selling a bunch of homes. What was that like? For me, it took me 6 months to sell my first property. So I was like I was the pony that you probably wouldn't have bet on.
Yeah. I only made $13,000 my first calendar year of selling real estate. So
What?
So what was your experience like?
Yeah, so I had made a bunch of relationships through the restaurant business, and one of the guys that I became good friends with had actually given me my first listing. So I think I didn't even have my license yet, and I actually had my first listing. So I gave it to the guy who mentored me, and I believe I did about 8 deals my first year from people that I knew.
What did your first mentor kind of look at you? Because you didn't even have your license at the time. He was probably like, what's going on here? Like,
yeah, he just said, since you don't have your license, we'll put it under, my name and we'll figure it out from there, because I was still waiting on my actual official license. Yeah.
That's so cool.
That's pretty awesome.
We were talking off camera, like how you parlayed really a lot of relationships that you built in the restaurant industry. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that you were able to do 8 deals your first calendar year. So talk a little bit about how instrumental that kind of work experience was, or the environment where you got to meet a lot of people, how that's helped you in the transition to real estate.
Yeah, so over the years, I've continued to stay in contact with these people. I figured out really quickly that there was a few people that were my A team that were rooting for me. And so at that time, I knew that I was going to stay in constant contact with these people over the years. And what happened is that as I stayed friends and in contact with these people, I started to get referral business. And once you work with one person and they love the way that you operate, then they refer 2, 3 more, so that was the relationships that I had nurtured over the years worked for real estate.
That's awesome. And that's parlayed into like a very enjoyable, profitable career. And I think you mentioned that the majority of your business actually comes from past client centers of influence, correct?
Yeah, all of my business this year.
Yeah.
Except for 2 door knockers.
That's awesome.
Door knocking.
Let's
awesome.
go.
Yeah.
Congrats on those.
Thank you.
What was maybe a misconception that you had about real estate, or was real estate everything that you expected at the beginning, or was there any challenges that maybe you faced getting into real estate that you faced in real estate so far?
Versus the challenges at the restaurant? Is that what you're asking?
No, more towards real estate, like related, like meaning like when, like I know when this was one of the big challenges I had. So when I got into real estate, I came from a retail background. And in retail, my parents' store was very well established, which means people were just walking through the door. So I got my real estate license, and I expected for people just to start calling me and saying, oh, we heard that you're a real estate agent. We want to hire you for the job. And it wasn't like that. My phone was not ringing. So I was like, okay, like I just came from this business where people just walk in and are calling me like, you mean I have to call people?
You're a goddamn genius.
You mean I've got to go door knocking? You mean I've got to do this or that? I had no idea. I think the best comparison that I had to real estate was what I saw on TV. Like $1 million listing, like, oh, like all of a sudden, like, oh, it's so cool. You're checking out all these houses, but I didn't like take into consideration the sales aspect of it. So the question was just like, was there anything that you imagined that real estate would be like that isn't like that? Or has there been any challenges in your career that you've kind of had to work through to get to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. I thought that business was just going to come. I didn't know I was going to have to, I knew that I was going to have to hustle, but I thought, because you're in Santa Barbara and you're blonde and like business is going to come to you. Like it's going to be easy. Like the restaurant, they're going to line up outside and everything's going to be great.
Like that's ever going to happen.
That was not the case by any means. I think it took me a few years to actually like be confident enough to like knock on people's door and like to actually call people I don't know. And I think I had a struggle with that in the beginning until I was just like, I just broke off. Like, I'm knocking on every door and, you just get to this place that like you realize $20,000 is in each door and you just start knocking and you're talking to people. And as I'm knocking and I'm talking, people want to talk to me. So I'm like, okay. And like, they're like, you want to come in? You want a cup of tea? I'm like, sure, let's do it. Let's go. But I don't know. It's just, that was good. That was a big thing for me. It's just like, I think real estate is obviously harder than people think it is. There's a lot more to real estate than just people coming to you. I think you have to be a hustler and have to be open to talking to people, absolutely. The skills, the contracts, part of it. I'm really good at paperwork now, but until you actually know the contracts and know what to say, it's kind of, it's challenging. I'm still working on scripts and everything to really get those down, and I believe that eXp has helped me with that. The chanting and the continual role plays, just everything is just really keeping me accountable, and I'm growing, and it's uncomfortable, but I'm really excited because I know that that's going to take me to doing a lot more business from the unknown people in my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it seems as though there was a recognition on your part, like, okay, I'm doing a lot of business from my past client centers of influence. And now the next evolution is to continue to grow that database. And I'm going to be able to do that by speaking to people I don't know. And then you're like, okay, well, I really want to learn and master that skill. And then you got proximity to people who do that very well. So that way you can learn the skill. And, I believe with your kind of drive and hustle and that sort of thing, you could double what you're doing just by talking to people that you don't know.
Yeah, that was a big reason I moved over to eXp is because I've been with Berkshire and I was recruited over to Keller Williams for obvious reasons. Obviously, Berkshire takes 20% of every check that you sell. Keller Williams is more of a cap model, which the more money I make, the more that matters. But the training and what you guys are doing here is completely different. The ability to just be completely transparent with your guys' business. I've never seen anybody do that with your systems, with how you guys are doing things. Complete transparency. It's like you just don't see that. So I would say that I was getting mediocre training over there. And when I realized like I'm tapping out at 15, 16, 17 deals, I realized that it's going to be the skills that are going to take me to the next level and to surround myself obviously with people that are doing 200, 100. Like if I want to, I felt kind of stagnant.
For me, it was really interesting that like when I got into, at least in Ventura County, people, I would tell them that I wanted to do 100 deals a year and they would look at me like I was crazy. And the reason they would look at me like I was crazy because there wasn't too many people doing it out here that had not been in the business for 40 plus years. Most of the people that were doing that type of volume had just had an immense book of business. But I found somebody that was doing it out in a different place. And when I found him, I was like, man, this is real. It's possible. So it made me think of is like, maybe this, you may have not known that the training at your previous company was mediocre until you probably got exposed to like what is actually available. And I think for other agents, I think that they don't know what they're missing until they're actually exposed to it. They may be like, oh no, like my company's great. I'm perfectly happy. I'm perfect. Like I talked to an agent the other day and he was just like, no, I'm happy. I'm like, and you could tell that as soon as I said it was like a block wall. Like he did not want to hear it, but deep down in my heart, I knew that we could help him.
Oh yeah.
You know, I knew that like there's different levels to this game and that we could actually pour into him, which kind of made me think about what you just said, that once you started getting exposure, like, oh my God, like this is a little bit different as well.
What did you say to me, Aaron? Once you see, you can't unsee.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's just true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember during that kind of process when you were kind of making that decision, I think twice you met with Jose, right? And he, as you're mentioning, really collaborated at a super high level, like with transparency, like let you come in, showed you like CRM, showed you what he's doing, showed technology, talked to you about lead sources. And you're saying like in other environments that you've been in, that's not the case. No.
Everybody holds their cards to their chest
They're like
and
this.
how they're doing. Yeah.
Kind of like they don't
How
want to
they're-
share.
Yeah.
Because they're fearful. They think that that all of a sudden if they share with you, that it's going to go away.
Yeah.
You know what the crazy part is? So I started mentoring a lot of agents now, and what ended up happening was the opposite. Like instead of it taken away from me, we actually started partnering up. So I've teamed up with other agents at eXp, like, hey, you want to co-list this with me? Or like, hey, look, I think that this listing would be better for you, or I can't talk, this guy, me and him don't connect, and they referred them to me. So my business actually grew as opposed to what most people think, that it like gets smaller and smaller if I share, you know?
Yeah, and we've talked numerous times, like this idea that collaboration is the new currency, because I do believe that the industry is undergoing a very rapid and aggressive shift.
Absolutely.
And in order for us as agents to be able to kind of hold the line sort of thing and to remain competitive, it requires us to collaborate at much higher levels, not with like silos or fiefdoms, but instead really kind of pouring into each other so that way we can continue to get our unfair share, which is what we're after,
Yeah.
is our unfair share of the business.
Absolutely.
What I wanted to know is like, you seem very driven, like very like motivated. Like what gets you up in the morning or what drives you?
I just love what I do.
Yeah.
And even more so now that I'm at eXp, because I'm on the morning, like they're up texting at 5 a.m. in the morning,
I know.
accountability, workout, journaling. We want that done, and I'm like, okay, I'm accountable to them, and I'm accountable to you guys and Carmen and Eliseo. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I've always been motivated. I'm just that type of person, but more so now because it's like I have all these accountability groups. I have a accountability with Carmen and Eliseo. We text every morning what our goals are for the day, and at night they've got me texting, and then I'm on the morning one, so it's like I get fired up because it's like, oh yeah. So it's like I wasn't accountable to anybody
No.
when I was over at Keller Williams. It was like do and and I know that I'm going to be texting them that night like what I did for the day. And so
I love it.
I know, isn't that awesome?
It's
and
so-
what I wrote down is environment dictates outcomes in a major way, right? So I would propose that was probably always inside of you. You were just looking for the right environment that would, like, you could plug into that would allow that to come out. Because you're the type of person that you do want to be held accountable, which a lot of people don't. You're the type of person that you do want to show up to things and learn and get better, where that's not everybody. So you just found the right environment.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the right training.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what will happen.
Yeah, it's awesome.
You know what it reminds me of? It's like that morning accountability started up from one of our agents that's really good, like at working out every morning. Like if you look at him, he's got like a 6-pack and he's like
Shout out to Sean San Jose. Sean San Jose.
ripped. And it's funny because there was a previous company in Southern California that had like a morning accountability group in the morning. And Sean would come to me and he would be like, hey, how can I help eXp? I'm like, how can I help? I'm like, what's one thing that you're really good at? He's like, well, look, I'm in really good shape. I'm like, why don't you do something around that? And that's how that whole thing developed now.
Yeah.
But I remember that other company was like, if you can help people start waking up at a certain time, reading, journaling, like their whole life just starts to change because of that environment and how much they're feeding their brain into. So it makes me think that we're trying to take little things from different companies that we feel like help and then put it into the eXp community to be able to kind of help. And it sounds like it's helping, which makes me really proud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
soon as I got the information, I was like a fire inside of me, like woof, it like flamed the fire, the flame. And I was like, okay, like, this is what I need to do to get to that next level. So.
Well, and tell me this, because I know that your process, like others, is when you were considering eXp, it's not uncommon that people speak to more than one kind of line or sponsor or one individual, right, about what it is that they're offering. So talk a little bit about that process and perhaps why you decided to make the decision, because we know you had lots of options to choose from. We do appreciate you choosing us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So talk about that process for you.
I just felt like I could stay where I can go to any big corporation where they're going to take 20% of everything I do for the rest of my life as I sell real estate, or I can come over to eXp where you guys were offering what I was looking for as far as training, and it really fit the dynamic of my family. My husband also has his license, not as active, but they do have a marriage cap of $16,000, and it's not so much about the money as it is like the training and what you guys are offering. No other brokerage offers that. I haven't seen it. And so I've talked to other, brokerages, Compass, other big brokerages, and, it's like they want $100,000 out of my pocket every year. And I'm like, what? Show me what you're going to do for that $100,000. It doesn't make sense to me. And, it was an interesting, I had a conversation with an agent the other day, and I was talking to her a little bit about eXp, and she just said that, she didn't think that it was a luxury brand, that she thought that she would go to Sotheby's. And I said, well, what is Sotheby's going to do for you besides give you a brand? Are they going to give you a luxury listing?
Yeah.
And she's like, no. And she's like, I just don't think that eXp fits that luxury brand. And I disagree.
Yeah.
I said, they're not working with you because of that brand, because of your Sotheby's brand, and it was just an interesting conversation to think why wouldn't it fit? Because they're working with us as individuals.
I agree. I think one of the things that in an attempt to demonstrate value or differentiate, what companies have done is to create a brand and sell us this idea that the brand's more valuable than we are.
No, sir.
And it's awesome. Even as I'm saying that, he's like, no. And I know because, in 2007, I was with KW for 15 years prior to making the change to eXp. When I was calling in and doing outbound calls.
15 years.
Yeah. Doing outbound calls, they would be like, Keller who? They didn't even know who it was. And it didn't matter. Right? Just like us from 2020 to 2021, nobody went to the office. And it didn't matter. We still did all the deals. We did stuff virtually, like all that, how we can be in community. So this is the first time that we've met each other in the physical form, but we've been on calls together for months now and interacted and right. So you can build community digitally with some kind of in person as well. So I think that's awesome that you had that awareness that you're like, no. Like I am the reason why people are doing business, not necessarily a brand.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Even for me, like the reason why I've been successful is because I found the right mentors and I got proximity to the right people. I don't think that it was, or I know for a fact it wasn't necessarily the brand, because none of the, or the first brand that I worked for didn't have that.
Well,
so.
And it was a concern for you because you were the top agent with a company that has a lot of market share. And one of the things they tried to say to you is like, hey, you're going to do less business when you move because the brand's so valuable. And what actually happened?
Not only that, but like they do that for all the agents. So the previous company that I worked for, they've got the #1 market share in West Ventura County. But it's funny because they printed out like a little slide that showed the market share, and eXp was actually on the radar. And I'm curious because I think that as we start to get bigger and bigger, I don't think they're going to post the whole market share thing anymore. But here's what was happening to me before I made the switch. Because they were telling me like, oh, your business grew because of the brand, I was concerned. So I had concerns before I joined the company too. I was like, maybe once I join eXp, I won't do the same amount of business. But then I went through this process, like, and this is kind of like unique. It's called thought auditing. It's like whenever you have a thought, like you have to ask yourself, is this thought actually true? Like, is it an accurate assessment of what is reality? And I started asking myself, I'm like, okay, are there other agents here locally that don't work for the same company, but do still a decent amount of business? And I was like, yes. Are there any agents that don't work for the same company that I do that make a lot more money than I do? I was like, yes. I'm like, what about this individual? There's a guy on YouTube by the name of Meet Kevin. He makes millions of dollars, like maybe like 20 million bucks. Never worked for the same company that I do, yet he makes 20 million bucks. So by auditing my thoughts, I came to the conclusion that it wasn't the company that made me successful. It was actually me as the individual. And regardless of which company that I work for, I was going to be successful regardless.
Correct. And now with technology and with social and things of that nature, like you become your own brand. And that's really like a fundamental truth, right?
Yeah, I had that experience prior to coming over. So I was at Berkshire, which is #1 in town. And I was like, I don't know if I want to leave a brokerage that's #1 in town to go to KW, because KW is not considered a #1 brand, you know? And so I knew when I had that conversation this time that didn't matter. You know, that didn't matter. But I do feel like eXp is providing more value than both of them. So
Yeah.
Not only that, Heather, but so many agents get held back because of that. Not only that, like I know agents paying $180,000 to the company.
I know. It's crazy.
And I think about it, I'm like, 180 minus 16, that leaves like 160,000 left over. You multiply that by a year of 10 years, you're looking at about $1.6 million that if you invest that money the right way, in 10 years, your life can completely change. And not only that, but if you can combine a $160,000 savings with actual value, now it becomes like even a no-brainer.
Right.
know?
And when you start to play that out and you start to do the math, because people are like, oh, well, I need like a space. You're like, wait a minute, you're going to save $160,000. So there's money there for you to reinvest back into your own personal business. Instead of giving money to kind of a brand for them to continue to do advertising of their brand, now you can start to reinvest back into your business. And you know, if you choose to, through social and different things, you can create your own brand.
Not only that, but that becomes a very expensive office space. $160,000
No,
per year.
bro.
For
Dude, I was
office.
talking to this one guy and he's like, he was doing that. It was 160, it was like 140. And I'm like, well, let me get this. Like, what's the value proposition? Like, how are they adding value? He's like, well, they let me bring my dog to the office. I'm like, bro, that's a very expensive dog. like that's a lot of money. And what was interesting is we did some changes. He dropped all this money at the bottom line, did what you were prescribing. He put some back into his business. Then he paid off 2 cars, ended up paying off his house. And within a short period of time was in a completely different financial situation just because of one major move, which dropped a lot of money to the bottom line.
Yeah.
That's how powerful
Just
that
kinda-
decision is.
Anything else that you feel would add value, like that people should know about you, or things that would add value to people?
I was also thinking too, like for anybody out there who is considering or thinking about making a change, right? Because I think everybody's thinking about it. There's these various different things that get in their mind, whether it's splits, whether it's brand, whether it's office space, I think it's a network marketing company. You know what I mean? I think it's a pyramid scheme.
yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like what would you suggest or propose to those individuals who are on the fence?
Yeah, I would suggest that they come and do what I did, jump on a Zoom. A lot of them are standoffish to even jump on a Zoom. So I would say jump on a Zoom, get connected with us, you know, come check out some of our trainings, have a conversation with Luis and the different systems and downline that he's offering. I mean, I think the systems was big for me, you know, but the training and I can't get through it all. There's so much information that you guys are offering. But I would say go ahead and make that transition to at least look at what we have to offer.
Yeah.
Because like we said, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it's not going to hurt to jump on a quick Zoom or have a conversation with you guys to see what it is that eXp offers, or at least come to our goal training, you know, this week, or an event or something.
That's right.
To see what we have. And then you can make a better decision.
Yeah, and I love
based
that.
on
And the reason why I love that is because you're giving people the guidance that you deployed. So like you went and shadowed Jose for, I think, twice. I know me and you were on, 4 or 5 calls, right? Walking through, answering questions, making sure that this made sense for you and your family and your business. So that way you could see like, hey, is this something that I want to participate in?
Yeah, I checked out a few trainings to make sure that like what you guys were saying and what I was actually receiving would line up. And then I did my research as far as offices and medical and all that stuff. And that all lined up fine too.
Has it been what you've expected?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a lot more than I expected.
That's awesome.
It's been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's one thing that maybe you've learned, or maybe like one thing that like that one idea or that one thing has helped your business already?
God, I've learned so much. I think I just talked to you about what I learned on Friday. We had a training, Jose and I had a training, and we were talking about how we present to sellers and how we present to one thing that they need. Find out what they need and present to that. And I showed up at a door yesterday and presented to what they needed. And I got the appointment. So just conversations, with people who are doing more business, that listening, learning, being, like you said, a student of this. But there's so much you guys offer. I haven't gotten through a part of it.
So somebody asked us, like, okay, how do I demonstrate my value proposition to sellers? I said, well, it really depends on what the seller needs. So like really the main thing is just understanding what their goals and objectives are, and then presenting.
Right. So
around
instead of them, like if they ask you like, what are you going to do? It's like, well, tell me, what do you feel is important?
Yeah. Like
and they're going to tell you, and then you can, give them what they
finding out like what they actually need,
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like, it's very customer centric, it's like you're giving them what they want.
Absolutely. Presenting to the need.
Exactly.
How can we help you? And speaking to that. And that's where you get the appointment. And it's very helpful. And he's got pictures and folders and all the stuff that we can use
I love that.
to demonstrate.
Well, and one of the things I want to acknowledge you for is that like you get really excited when you learn new things.
Yeah,
it's like
I do.
cool. Like and you're like, oh man, this is so awesome. And then, when you were telling Jose that story off camera, and you just lit up like, wow, like we had that conversation, and then I went to the door, and then I remembered what you said, and we said it, and boom, I set an appointment. It's just really cool to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and what's really true for me is like I'm just super appreciative that somebody of your caliber would choose to partner with us. And like we're super excited moving forward to like see how you flourish and add as much value as we possibly can to help you to accomplish that.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
If people wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
They can call me directly. I've had brokers reach out to me and actually ask me why I've switched over to eXp. 805-231-3558.
Awesome.
People want to get a hold of you?
At Aaron Novello on TikTok.
And for all of our viewers, thanks again for watching. This is also Luis Morales. We had Heather and Aaron on the show today. This is another episode of the Residual Real Estate Agent Show. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button and make sure to hit that share button. Thank you so much, and
Thank you.
peace.